Chapter 1: Dust and Echoes. The scorching sun hovered above the dusty plains of Calder Creek, a rugged frontier town where grit and survival were daily companions. Horses snorted near the wooden posts outside the saloon, and townsfolk moved about with guarded eyes, shadows of hardship behind their stoic faces. On the edge of town, nestled beside the rolling hills of dry amber grass, stood Whispering Rock Ranch, a sprawling empire of cattle, legacy, and grief. It belonged to Beau McAllister, a once feared gunslinger turned wealthy cattle baron. 2 years ago, his wife Evelyn died giving birth to their daughter Lila. Since then, Beau lived as a ghost of the man he was, ruthless with ranch hands, distant with townsfolk, and utterly lost with a baby girl he couldn't bear to look at without crying. Now 5 years old, Lila needed more than weary maids and rotating tutors. She needed warmth, a nanny. And so, reluctantly, Beau allowed a notice to be pinned in the post office window. He didn't expect much. He certainly didn't expect Clara Whitmore. Chapter 2: The Stranger's Shadow. Clara stepped off the stagecoach in boots worn from travel and a dress dusted in trail dirt. She held her satchel close, her bonnet hiding her honey-brown hair, but nothing could mask the fierce intelligence and quiet sorrow in her hazel eyes. She had the look of someone who had left something behind and didn't plan on looking back. No one knew she was Evelyn's sister. 10 years younger, Clara had been estranged from Evelyn after a bitter argument, the kind neither sister had forgiven. When news of Evelyn's death finally reached Clara at the Women's Refuge in Missouri, guilt consumed her. She hadn't come for Evelyn's funeral, but she would come now. For Lila. For the blood that still lived. But she kept her identity hidden. "I'm here for the nanny position," she told the gruff ranch foreman at the gate. When both first saw her standing on the porch, sunlight casting gold on her face, his breath hitched. Something about her looked hauntingly familiar. "You worked with children?" he asked stiffly, arms crossed over his broad chest. "Yes," Clara said. 5 years. Children of widows and war wives." He nodded slowly, then turned. "Don't expect gratitude. The girl is difficult." But Lila wasn't difficult, she was just lonely. And Clara, with gentle songs, bedtime stories, and soft laughter that hadn't echoed in these halls for years, began to pull light into the dark corners of the McAllister household. Chapter 3: Of Quiet and Storms. Days turned into weeks. Clara cleaned Lila's room, planted wildflowers along the fence, and fixed the old rocking chair where Evelyn used to sit. She avoided Beau as best she could, but fate seemed to conspire otherwise. He'd pass her in the hall, catch her tending to Lila's hair in the garden, watch her from the shadows of the stable as she taught the girl to ride. Once, he found her standing by Evelyn's gravestone. "She used to hum that same tune," he said, startling her, "the one you sing to Lila." Clara froze. "It's an old lullaby." He stared at her for a long moment. "You look like her, talk like her too." Clara's heart pounded, but she only nodded and turned away. Chapter 4: The Fire in the Hills. Trouble came on horseback, riding out of the hills with whiskey breath and six-shooters. Wade Carver, an outlaw Beau had once bested in a high-stakes poker game, returned for vengeance. He wasn't just after land, he wanted blood. "You stole my steak, McAllister," Wade spat one night outside the saloon, "and now you hide behind skirts and children." Ukos. Beau didn't rise to the bait, but the tension set the town on edge. That night, Clara heard hooves outside. She rushed to Lila's room just as a window shattered and a torch flew in. Fire. Flames spread fast. Clara grabbed Lila and raced down the stairs, choking on smoke. Just as the beam above gave way, Beau crashed through the door. He wrapped them in his coat, shielding them as burning wood fell around them. Outside, coughing and shaking, Clara looked at him in shock. "You came for us," she whispered. "I couldn't lose you," he rasped. "Either of you." Chapter 5: Ashes and Truth. The fire destroyed half the ranch house, but the town came together to rebuild. Ranch hands worked through dawn, townsfolk brought food, and through it all, Beau changed. He spent time with Lila, he smiled more, and he looked at Clara not with suspicion, but with something deeper, like he had remembered how to feel again. One late afternoon, as they sat under the cottonwood tree, Lila asleep between them, Clara spoke. "There's something I need to tell you." Beau turned, studying her face. "I'm Clara Whitmore," she said. "Evelyn was my sister." Silence. The wind rustled the leaves above. "I left home young. We fought. I didn't come back. And when I heard she was gone, I couldn't forgive myself." Beau's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with pain. "Why didn't you tell me? I thought you'd send me away, and I needed to see her child. I needed a chance to make things right." He looked down at Lila, then back at Clara. "You already have." Chapter 6: The Dance of Forgiveness. The town's annual harvest festival arrived, a celebration of survival, of community, of hope. Clara wore a dress she'd sewn herself. Lila wore daisies in her hair. As the townsfolk danced under lantern light, Beau approached Clara. "May I have this dance?" She hesitated, then smiled. They moved in slow rhythm, the music winding through their silence. Around them, children laughed, fires crackled, and somewhere the stars began to scatter across the night sky. "She would have wanted us to be happy," Clara said softly. Beau's voice was low. "She would have wanted Lila to grow up in love." He paused. "And I think she'd forgive me for falling in love with you." Clara's eyes welled with tears. "I think she would too." Chapter 7: Home in the Heart. Months passed. The ranch flourished. Lila learned to read, to ride, to laugh without fear. Beau built a new wing on the house, with a nursery, a reading room, and a rocking chair just like the one Evelyn had used. Clara stood by the fence one morning, watching the cattle in the distance. Beau came beside her, hands in his pockets. "I thought I buried my heart when I buried her," he said, "but maybe it was just waiting to be found." She reached for his hand. "And maybe love doesn't end, it just changes shape." He kissed her forehead, then looked at the house. "Lila calls you Mama now." Clara smiled through tears. "She can call me anything. I'm hers." Epilogue: Redemption's Gate. Years later, a sign stood at the edge of Whispering Rock Ranch. McAllister Whitmore Ranch, Est, on love, rebuilt through grace. Clara's garden bloomed with wildflowers. Beau rode the hills with Lila, now a bold young girl with her mother's spirit and her aunt's fire. And in the home once ruled by silence, laughter echoed once more. Because sometimes the greatest stories of the West weren't written with guns and gold, but with second chances, hidden truths, and a love that outlived sorrow. Final chapter: The Vows at Whispering Rock. Spring came soft and golden to Calder Creek. The cottonwoods were budding, the scent of wild sage drifting through the warm morning air, and the hills around Whispering Rock Ranch bloomed with life. Clara stood in front of the mirror in the old nursery, now transformed into her dressing room. Her dress was simple. Ivory lace, hand-stitched details, and a wildflower crown made by Lila herself. Lila burst through the door in a satin sash, grinning ear to ear. "Mama, Papa says he's going to cry." Clara laughed, her heart lifting with the sound. "Well, then I suppose I'll have to be the brave one." Outside, beneath the arch of intertwined willow branches and honeysuckle, Beau waited, dressed in a clean black waistcoat, his silver cufflinks reflecting the sun. The crowd was small. Ranch hands, townsfolk, a few close friends who had stood by them through fire, fear, and healing. When Clara stepped into view, arm in arm with the town's elderly preacher, the wind seemed to pause. Beau's breath caught, just as it had the first day he saw her, covered in trail dust, carrying hidden sorrow in her eyes. But now she was radiant, no longer burdened, her heart open and her soul known. As she reached him, he whispered, "You brought me back to life." Clara's eyes shimmered. "And you gave me something to live for." The vows were short, honest, spoken not just between two lovers, but two people who had walked through grief and guilt, held together by a child who had taught them how to love again. After the kiss, Lila ran into their arms. "We're really a family now," she squealed. Clara looked to Beau, then knelt to Lila. "We always were, sweetheart. This just made it official." 1 year later. The ranch had never been more alive. The new foals ran through the pastures, the air echoed with Clara's laughter, and Beau's tired eyes now held light again. On the porch swing, Clara rocked slowly, a soft bundle in her arms, their newborn son named James Evelyn McAllister. Layla sat beside her, reading aloud. Beau stepped out, leaned against the post, and took it all in. The family he never expected, the peace he never thought he'd find. "Funny," Clara said, glancing up, "how a job posting changed all our lives." He walked over and kissed her gently. "You weren't just the nanny. You were the answer to a prayer I never knew I made." Together, under the vast western sky, the McAllisters watched the sun set. No longer alone, no longer haunted, just home.